The night began like any other on Jimmy Kimmel's late night show, with the crowd cheering, lights flashing, and the host striding confidently onto the stage delivering his usual round of jokes. Everyone in the audience was excited, especially because the guest for the night was none other than Keanu Reeves. Known for his calm personality, deep thoughts, and unforgettable roles in The Matrix and John Wick, Keanu has always brought a quiet intensity to interviews. As he stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Jimmy greeted him with a warm handshake and a smile, clearly excited to have him on the show again. The energy was high and everything seemed normal, but as the interview progressed, something unexpected happened. A tension began to build between the host and the guest, and what started as a casual conversation quickly turned into a heated exchange that left the audience stunned. Jimmy began the interview with light questions, asking about Keanu's latest film and his personal life. Keanu answered calmly, offering thoughtful insights and showing his usual philosophical side. The crowd laughed at Jimmy's jokes and everything seemed to be going well until the tone of the conversation began to shift. Jimmy made a sarcastic remark about the excessive violence in the John Wick series, jokingly suggesting that Keanu might be encouraging a culture of aggression. Keanu's smile faded slightly and his tone became more serious. He responded with a quiet but firm comment about the difference between fiction and reality and the responsibility of storytellers to reflect on complex human emotions. Jimmy tried to steer the conversation back to humor, but Keanu wasn't in the mood to laugh it off. Instead, he challenged the idea that films like his should be blamed for societal problems. The atmosphere grew heavier as Jimmy pushed the issue further, asking whether Keanu thought he had a moral obligation to influence audiences positively. Keanu replied that art was not meant to preach but to provoke thought, and that everyone interprets stories differently. Jimmy smirked and made another joke, but this time Keanu didn't even pretend to smile. He leaned forward and spoke with quiet intensity, saying that interviews should be about meaningful conversation, not just sound bites and laughs. The audience was silent, unsure of whether to laugh or stay quiet. Jimmy tried to recover by changing the topic, but Keanu brought the discussion back to the role of media and shaping society. What was supposed to be a light segment turned into an unexpected debate that no one saw coming. As Keanu continued to speak about integrity in art and the importance of respecting different viewpoints, Jimmy appeared visibly uncomfortable. He tried to crack a few more jokes, but Keanu remained serious. The host's usual charm wasn't working and the audience could feel the discomfort growing. Jimmy interrupted Keanu mid-sentence, prompting the actor to raise his hand slightly and ask to finish his thought. That move surprised everyone. It was rare to see a guest stand up to a host so directly. Jimmy paused, then let him speak, but the tension was now thick. Keanu spoke with conviction about how interviews should be platforms for genuine dialogue rather than entertainment wrapped in humor. The crowd didn't know how to react and a strange silence took over the room. Jimmy attempted to regain control of the segment by abruptly shifting the topic to a funny story from Keanu's past, but Keanu refused to play along. Instead, he asked Jimmy why late-night hosts rarely address real issues or allow guests to speak deeply about their experiences. The crowd murmured and Jimmy looked caught off guard. He laughed nervously and said that the show was meant to be light-hearted, but Keanu wasn't buying it. He replied that avoiding depth in favor of constant jokes reduces the value of real human interaction. The words hit hard and even Jimmy seemed momentarily speechless. The audience began to sense that something unusual and unscripted was unfolding before their eyes. Jimmy responded with a more serious tone, saying that there's a balance to strike between seriousness and comedy. Keanu nodded but asked if comedy was becoming an excuse to avoid uncomfortable truths. The question hung in the air. Jimmy tried to lighten the moment by showing a clip from Keanu's new movie, but the energy had already shifted. The crowd clapped awkwardly, but the momentum of the show was lost. Jimmy looked off stage and seemed unsure about what to do next. The producers were likely scrambling behind the scenes, trying to figure out how to handle the escalating tension between the host and the guest. Keanu meanwhile remained calm and composed, his eyes reflecting quiet frustration rather than anger. The situation took another turn when Jimmy sarcastically asked if Keanu thought he was better than the system. Keanu replied, simply saying that being different wasn't about superiority but about staying true to oneself. The crowd let out a low gasp. Jimmy looked stunned for a second. He said something under his breath that didn't quite land as a joke, and Keanu picked up on it, asking if he was being mocked for speaking sincerely. Jimmy tried to deny it, but the damage was done. The room was now completely silent. What had started as a cheerful late-night interview had become a public clash of ideals. Keanu stood his ground while Jimmy tried unsuccessfully to steer things back to safety. Finally, Jimmy stood up from his chair, clearly frustrated, and announced that the segment was over. The audience was stunned. Keanu stood to his face calm but serious. He looked at the crowd and said thank you before walking off stage. No dramatic exit, no shouting, just a quiet departure that spoke louder than any outburst could have. Jimmy sat back down, visibly shaken, and tried to continue the show, but the energy was gone. The next guest came out, but the audience was still in shock from what they had just witnessed. The internet lit up instantly, with people posting clips and sharing opinions on what had just happened. By morning, the entire entertainment world was buzzing with the story. Headlines ranged from Keanu defends artistic integrity to Jimmy Kimmel clashes with guests on live TV. Fans were divided, some praising Keanu for his honesty, others defending Jimmy's role as a comedian. Social media exploded with debate and speculation. Every moment of the interview was analyzed, dissected, and turned into memes. Some viewers felt it was a wake-up call about how entertainment interviews have lost their authenticity, while others believed Keanu had taken things too seriously. No matter the opinion, everyone agreed it was one of the most unexpected moments in live television history. Keanu released a brief statement the next day saying that he didn't intend to cause conflict but believed in speaking his truth. He acknowledged that not every space allows for deep conversations, but said he felt compelled to express his concerns about media culture. The statement was calm, respectful, and in line with Keanu's character. Jimmy didn't respond publicly but joked lightly about it in his next episode, saying sometimes you just can't win. The tension between the two wasn't directly addressed again, but it left a lasting impression. Fans continued to debate whether the exchange was necessary or disruptive, but either way it had everyone talking. Behind-the-scenes reports suggested that the show's producers were caught completely off guard. Keanu hadn't expressed any concerns before the interview, and they had expected a routine segment. Some insiders said Jimmy was genuinely rattled while others claimed he felt Keanu had hijacked the show. Regardless of the internal drama, the clip became one of the most viewed segments online within hours. People replayed the confrontation over and over, trying to understand what went wrong or what went right depending on their perspective. It became a cultural moment, one of those rare instances where a celebrity refused to stick to the script. Over time the buzz began to settle, but the impact remained. The clip was used in discussions about the future of celebrity interviews and whether late-night shows should evolve to include more authentic conversations. Some argued that what Keanu did was necessary to challenge a system that prioritizes laughs over substance. Others said the format of the show didn't allow for such depth and that both sides had a point. It became clear that the incident was more than a clash of personalities. It was a reflection of a deeper cultural divide about entertainment and sincerity. Keanu returned to promoting his films elsewhere while Jimmy moved on with his usual lineup of guests and gags. The confrontation became a reference point for future interviews. Other guests began to hint at it, some jokingly, some seriously. Fans brought it up every time Keanu made a public appearance. It even sparked think pieces about the role of authenticity in modern media. The fact that it happened live made it all the more impactful. It was raw, unfiltered and completely real. That's what made it unforgettable. Whether you admired Keanu's boldness or sympathized with Jimmy's struggle to control the situation, it was clear that both men had shown something true about themselves. And in a world full of fake moments, that truth resonated. In the end, Keanu Reeves being kicked off Jimmy Kimmel's show wasn't just a dramatic incident, it was a moment of cultural significance. It challenged audiences to think about what they expect from their entertainment and what happens when someone refuses to play along. Keanu reminded everyone that sincerity is sometimes uncomfortable but necessary. Jimmy reminded everyone that even professionals can be thrown off balance by the unexpected. It was a fiery showdown, but one rooted not in hate but in conviction. And that's why it will be remembered not just as a celebrity clash but as a turning point in the ongoing conversation about authenticity in the public eye.